Hello and welcome to Tech Deals, unboxing and overview of this ASUS Prime H310M-E Coffee Lake 8th generation motherboard that frankly I don't think most of you should even consider buying. Why am I covering it? Because people don't know what it's all about. It just got released in April of 2018 and I want to cover it and discuss its pros, pro singular, and its cons, many, so that I can perhaps dissuade you from buying it and encourage you to buy a B360 instead. Let me be clear, this is not a knock against ASUS. I would say the same thing about MSI, Gigabyte, ASRock, or anybody else at the H310 chipset level. It's the chipset, not the brand, that's the issue. ASUS makes very nice B360s. I have no issues with them. You can see I have some more here. We'll talk about those in a minute. But if you are custom building a machine, even if it's with an i3-8100, which is what this is, spend $10 more and get a B360. I'll be doing an unboxing and a review of one of those as well, but this is mostly an informative video designed to tell you why you shouldn't be buying this. It is designed for Acer and Dell and companies like that to build millions of computers and save $5 each on, which makes a big deal to them when they're building that many machines. And frankly, the average consumer buying the average $400 or $500 pre-built Acer has no idea what motherboard it has anyway. So that's what it's meant for, but it exists because the companies have to make them, so here we go. Since staring at a box is kind of boring, we're going to do the unboxing first, and then I'll talk about the chipset differences with the other ones and recommendations at the end of the video. Inside, it's pretty basic, as you would expect for a motherboard under $70, but basically you have a motherboard in a bag and some stuff underneath. Inside the box, we have a user's manual. ASUS is really good with their user manuals, frankly the best in the business as far as I'm concerned, and there is a driver CD in here as well, which likely you will not use because Windows has all the drivers built in these days and Update does that for you, but it's there just in case you need it. And then in here you have some very basic information about the board because there's not a lot on it. 2 serial ATA data cables. The M.2 mounting thing, which is a new one actually for me. It's a little piece of plastic rather than a screw, but that's if you want to put an M.2 SSD in. The most basic I.O. shield ever. No screen printing, no labelings, just a piece of metal that's silver, but for this price point, it is what it is. And then that brings us to the motherboard itself. Now, it's a micro ATX board, and it's a fairly small one, but it does have some features, and it is larger than some of the really small boards out there. This board is so small, I can put it on one stand. Usually I have to use 2 stands for a board, but it does the job. And if you want to use a very small computer case, it certainly is going to fit into pretty much anything. It's not a mini ITX board, so keep in mind that ITX cases won't work, but it's really small. I'm going to bring some close-up footage here so you can see the motherboard itself, and I'm going to run you around it and talk about its features really quick. In the upper right-hand corner, you can see a CPU fan mount. That's where you're going to plug in most likely the stock cooler at this price point. Then we have 2 memory module slots. Now this supports up to 32 gigabytes of RAM, but I don't expect most of you to do that. Perhaps 8 gigabytes to 4 gigabyte sticks, or maybe 2 8 gigs for 16. You've got the 24-pin ATX slot. You have the first of the serial ATA data cable ports, which is separated from the other 3 along the bottom. Coming further down, we have all the connectors on the bottom of the board. You see the 3 serial ATA data cables, the front panel connectors in the bottom right-hand corner. Moving across, we have a USB 3.0 front panel connector. Now it's not in the ideal location. Usually I like it on the side by the power connector, but given the small size of the board, it's probably fine. Then we have 2 USB 2.0 front panel connectors, then a COM port for serial, and then a audio connector for the front panel audio connectors. Coming up from there, we have 2 1X PCI accessory connectors, an X16 slot for installing, say, a graphics card, and then above that, we have the M.2 slot, which will take either a SATA or an NVMe SSD. Please note, do not install an NVMe SSD on here. It is a PCI Express 2.0 slot only, 2 lanes only. It is a quarter or 25% of the speed of the next generation up. So if you're going to go NVMe, skip this board for sure. Above that, you see the CPU socket and some very, very basic VRMs and no cooling whatsoever on them. It's not designed for anything powerful whatsoever, but an i3-8100 or frankly an i5-8400 would be fine. And then there is a 4-pin CPU power connector up at the top. There is one more chassis fan connector to the left of the CPU connector, and those are the only 2 fan connectors on the board, one for the chassis and one for the CPU. So if you're looking at putting this in a case with 3 fans, you're going to have a connector problem. Moving to the back plate of the board, you can see that we have both a PS2 keyboard and PS2 mouse connector. This board is really designed for office systems that may be using older components or need both of those connectors. Then we have a VGA port. Again, sort of an office-oriented thing because it's 2018 and VGA has been dead for a while. But we do have an HDMI port. Please note HDMI 1.4, good for 1080p at 60 Hz. We have two USB 3.1 Gen 1 5 gigabit per second ports, two USB 2.0 ports. We do have gigabit Ethernet. It is a Realtek LAN chip, not an Intel chip, but again, at this price point, it's fine. And then we have the Realtek ALC 887 7.1 HD audio, but this is a very old audio solution, so if you're looking for high quality gaming audio, this isn't it, but it'll be fine for listening to music and just using the internet, that sort of thing. It's fine. If you want HD 7.1 surround, you have to use the front panel audio connectors because there aren't enough connectors back here. I said at the beginning of this video that I don't recommend you buy this board because it's designed for the big OEMs. Step up to the B360. Manufacturer doesn't matter. I mentioned before I like ASUS. Now I did buy this board myself. They didn't send me a sample, but I do on my test bench behind me have this board right here, which is the ASUS ROG Strix Z370. Now it's a $200 motherboard, but that will take an i7 8700K to 5 gigahertz with no AVX offset at 1.35 volts with a 280mm liquid cooler without any issues whatsoever. 8-64 full stress testing. It is an excellent, excellent board. If that's the route you want to go, I do recommend it wholeheartedly. This is for, say, the i3-8100. Now, it is possible, I want to put a disclaimer in here, that we will be getting updated Coffee Lake Pentium processors later this year. They are not released today. Currently, this is the lowest end CPU which will work in this board, but there is a possibility of having 2-core 4-thread Pentium chips released in some time in 2018, and that's probably the only chip I would recommend in a board like this. But again, as I said, with only a $10 price difference between this and the B360s, buy a B360. Seriously, the feature differences are huge and vast. USB support, the NVMe support, the HSIO lanes, the PCI Express to the chipset. This is PCI Express 2.0. It's 10 years old in its design. It is an extremely basic budget board. Please don't buy one, get a B360. Now you guys might be asking, why in the world is Ryzen on the desk? This is an Intel video. Well, I have to say, I actually don't think the low end of Intel chips makes a lot of sense in general because $110 for 4 cores, 4 threads, and pretty mediocre integrated graphics, 3.6 gigahertz. $99 for 4 cores, 4 threads, 3.7 gigahertz, unlocked and overclockable, that's not, a good 65 watt TDP cooler that beats the pants off of that cooler, decent integrated graphics that will actually play games, and it installs on $45 to $55 motherboards that cost less than this that are, while not overclockable, good enough and better than this is. The cold hard reality, I love Intel processors. They work great. I own several of them. If you're on the budget end of the line, I wouldn't buy any of the i3s, and an i5 would be silly in this board. The Ryzen 3 2200G combined with either an A320 or a B350 or the upcoming B450 boards is really the way to go in my opinion. More value for the money. Like this video if you like it, share it with your friends if you loved it. Remember to subscribe to my channel with the big huge red button directly below. Questions and comments in the comment section, and as always, check the links in the video description. Links to everything shown and discussed here will be down there. Amazon and Newegg, they are affiliate links. They do support the channel. If you found this helpful, useful, and informative, please use those when shopping. It really is appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video.